Tom Roche was a 36-year-old man living with his girlfriend Barbara Rondeau in Burbank, California. The couple loved riding their Harley Davidson and would go on weekend trips across California. They also shared a passion for cycling and had joined a cycle club. The couple had been together for 16 years and both were very close. Barbara worked at a blueprint company while Tom worked as a supervisor in a machine shop. In fall of 1991, Tom got a job offer of a management position with a company that plated aircraft parts, and he accepted. He was supposed to quit his job at the machine shop and start his new job on September 16, 1991. However, he never did. 3 days before he was to start his new job, he seemingly vanished into thin air. On September 13, 1991, Tom drove Barbara to work. They had plans to meet up for lunch, however, he never showed up. Barbara waited for a few minutes but eventually went back to work. She got worried when Tom did not call to let her know why he couldn't make it for lunch. She got home around 5:30 p.m. and found the front door to be unlocked. She looked around the house but could not find Tom anywhere. She noticed the newspaper was unopened. Barbara found it odd since Tom would always read the sports section in the morning. In addition, Tom had planned to install a motorcycle battery that day, but the battery was found on the counter. Barbara believes Tom had no plans of leaving the house that day, as the answering machine was turned off, something Tom only did if he was going to stay at home for the day. Barbara decided to wait for Tom to come back home, but he never did. The next day, Barbara reported him missing. Police interviewed friends, family, and neighbors. A neighbor reported that she had seen Tom talking to a man standing next to a pickup truck at approximately 9:30 a.m. Tom was looking into the bed of the truck and they seemed to be having a normal conversation. Tom had also made 2 bank deposits earlier that morning at around 8:20 a.m. However, he did not withdraw any money, which suggests that Tom had no plans of leaving. Police could not figure out if Tom had left voluntarily or if he was a victim of foul play. 6 days after his disappearance, on September 19, Barbara received a letter addressed to the family of Thomas Roche. In the letter, the author claimed responsibility for Tom's death. The author wrote, "I'm suffering a great deal of guilt right now about what I have done, and I feel it is necessary to write about it for my sake and yours. You don't know me and hopefully never will, but I am the one who killed Tom Roche. I cannot and will not go to jail. I could never handle it. I almost lost my mind. Never again. I loved being in Vietnam. In fact, those were the happiest days of my life. I felt such a rush whenever I had a confirmed kill that it was hard to switch it off when I came back to the States. For 18 long years, I have held this in check, despite the nightmares and fantasies about killing. This Jeffrey Dahmer thing really got to me, and I wonder if I could still do it. I figured LA would be the best thing for what I had in mind. I did not want just a random thing, cause you can get caught that way, so I set up a plan. I met Tom in a strip joint in the valley and got to talking. He fell for it, and we arranged to meet on Friday the 13th. I must assure you that it was neat and quick. I do not think he suffered at all. I am very sorry for what I have done, and I know in time that the guilt will leave me. So will your pain." Police could not rule out the letter as a hoax or a sick prank, as the envelope which contained the letter also contained Tom's driver's license, credit card, and earrings that he had been wearing when he disappeared. The letter had no fingerprints or a return address. Police believe the letter writer was referencing to Jeffrey Dahmer but misspelled it to Jeffrey Dahmer. During another round of questioning, an employee at a motorcycle parts store came forward and claimed to have seen Tom on September 14th. a day after his disappearance. The employee told police Tom was acting strange. He said that they would always crack jokes at one another, but on this day, Tom was quiet. The employee said he went to the warehouse to pick up some parts for a customer, and when he returned, Tom had already left. Authorities believe the employee did see Tom, but was mistaken about the date. Police also wondered if the sighting was true. Could it be possible that Tom left voluntarily and sent a fake letter to make Barbara think he was dead? 4 months later, on January 11, 1992, bone fragments were discovered on a remote hillside in Placer County, California. The police found several personal items at the crime scene, which included a duffel bag, flashlight, hunting knife, bottled water, 2 pairs of prescription eyeglasses, an empty prescription medicine bottle, a belt, a boot, and several shirts. The clothes had a motorcycle emblem on them, which indicated to the police that the items belonged to Tom Roche. Barbara confirmed that the shirts and the eyeglasses belonged to Tom. According to police, if the items did belong to Tom, then he seemed to have packed for a trip. It would take another 2 years for a DNA test to confirm that the bone fragments found were that of Tom Roche. The cause of death was determined to be a single gunshot wound to the head. There have been no updates since, and the case remains unsolved. Jaliek Rainwalker was a 12-year-old boy living with his adoptive parents Stephen Kerr and Jocelyn A. McDonald in Greenwich, New York. Jaliek had a rough start in life. He was born to a crack cocaine-addicted mother and was placed into foster care system just 2 days after being born. Jaliek would spend next few years in 6 different foster homes before being adopted by Stephen Kerr and Jocelyn A. McDonald. Due to his childhood abuse, Jaliek had severe attachment disorder and would often have violent outbursts and temper tantrums. Jaliek's former foster parents had cared for him for 4 years, and they said his outburst could last up to an hour. However, they also said that he was an intelligent and a happy child with a beaming smile. His former foster parents had decided to adopt Jaliek, but one day Jaliek attacked their daughter, and fearing their daughter's safety, the family decided he could no longer stay with them. He was eventually adopted by Stephen and Jocelyn. Jaliek's adoptive parents, Stephen and Jocelyn, had 3 biological sons and an adopted daughter. They stated that the 4 siblings were afraid of Jaliek due to his violent tantrums. Jaliek's adoptive family lived in rural Washington County, New York. They lived a non-traditional life in a 2-room cabin with no running water. They used an outhouse for bathroom. The only electricity they had was from a generator that would run for several hours, and all the family members slept in one room. All of the children were homeschooled. One day in 2007, Jaliek threatened one of the kids in the homeschool group. Stephen and Jocelyn were worried and called the crisis hotline expressing their concern. They stated that Jaliek was unmanageable and they wanted to reverse the adoption. The counselor said that it was not possible. However, they could send him to a respite care for a few days. Jaliek was then sent to a respite care with a couple who had previously provided respite care for him. He stayed there for a week. Jaliek was returned to his adoptive parents a week later on November 2nd. He was scheduled to go to another respite care the next day. Stephen took Jaliek to his parents' house instead of his own house as his family was afraid of Jaliek. Stephen would stay with Jaliek for the night until he is sent to the respite care the next day. Stephen's parents were out of town, so Stephen and Jaliek were the only people at the house. At 8 p.m., the two ate dinner at the local Red Robin before heading to Stephen's parents' house. According to Stephen, both went to bed shortly after. The next morning, Stephen woke up around 7:30 a.m. and could not find Jaliek anywhere. However, he found a note that Jaliek reportedly left behind. The note said, "Dear everybody, I'm sorry for everything. I won't be a bother anymore. Goodbye, Jaliek." Stephen reported Jaliek missing at 8:57 a.m. Police launched a massive search for the missing boy, but to no avail. Stephen told police that he believes Jaliek ran away. He said that Jaliek took his duffel bag and his favorite toys with him. Jaliek was wearing a yellow fleece jacket at the time. Police believed Jaliek may have been a victim of foul play. However, they have not ruled out voluntary disappearance or suicide. Stephen and Jocelyn said Jaliek had been depressed and suicidal in the days before his disappearance. However, he was not receiving any treatment or therapy for his mental conditions. Police started to suspect Jaliek's adoptive parents in Jaliek's disappearance. Jocelyn took a polygraph test while Stephen refused. It was found that the note that Jaliek left behind was not a goodbye note. His respite caregiver said Jaliek wrote that letter at their house because he wanted to apologize to his family for his behavior. His adoptive parents maintained their innocence and suggested that Jaliek ran away and may have been living with an African American family or a gang. They stated that Jaliek considered himself black instead of biracial and had wanted to live with an African American family. It was later found that Stephen had not stayed the entire night at his parents' house as he claimed. His cell phone records put him near an industrial part of town near Hudson River on the night Jaliek disappeared. He was also captured on CCTV driving his van around Greenwich after midnight, even though he told police he stayed at his parents' house the entire evening. 2 months after Jaliek's disappearance, a cryptic letter postmarked from Westchester was sent to several local newspapers. The letter read, "Jaliek is still alive. Need a foot soldier for this war on drugs. Picked him up on Route 40, Post 30. He's okay, no fake. He asks his mama and papa, who are the Marconi family. My cat named Diamond. Why does the Franti yell fire? Don't try to look. We are not there." The letter did not make much sense to the investigators. The only thing that stood out was that Jaliek did have a cat named Diamond. Police believe the reference to Franti yelling fire was from a contemporary rap song, although its connection is still unclear. Police appealed to the letter writer for clues, but the person was never heard from again. Police named Stephen as a person of interest in the case. In February 2008, the police conducted search of Stephen's father's house and seized a computer in order to determine if the note had been written using the computer. However, nothing came out of it. During their search, police also found the duffel bag and the toys that Stephen claimed Jaliek took with him on the night of the disappearance in his father's garage. 4 months later, Stephen and Jocelyn moved out of the cabin to Vermont. They have refused to cooperate with the investigators ever since. Jaliek's adoptive maternal grandmother, who has been active in search for Jaliek, broke into Stephen and Jocelyn's cabin after they moved out to search for clues. While searching, Barbara found the yellow fleece jacket that Stephen claimed Jaliek was wearing on the night he disappeared. Barbara was charged with burglary and pled not guilty. It is unclear if the jacket has been tested for forensic evidence, as I could not find any mention of it in any of the sources. Barbara has claimed that Stephen had been violent towards Jaliek in the past. She reported that one time she witnessed him dragging Jaliek and dunking him in a nearby creek. She said Jocelyn asked Stephen to write a letter of apology to Jaliek and made him do Jaliek's chores for a month. Stephen Kerr remains the only person of interest in the case, but there is no solid evidence linking him to the crime. Jaliek remains missing to this day.